Okay, so upper and lower motor neurons, and then our tracks that they have to go up and down, because sensory information have to go up, motor information have to come down. And the way that information will pass, we will say that information is going to either go by way of an indirect or direct pathway. And just like their name implies, a direct pathway, okay, it will be direct to the skeletal muscles that are going to need it. And indirect, if you think about indirect, it might have another synapse that it goes through. But if you think about the movement that we make, we have movements that we make that's very precise. Like, for example, writing, for example, is a very fine-tuned movement. But walking, believe it or not, walking is it's a very less precise movement. It's a very jerky movement, believe it or not. We just, and in all reality, we're not supposed to be walking upright anyway. So when you look at this type of movement, movement can either be where it goes directly to the area that it's supposed to go to, areas, for example, that are going to be for very fine-tuned. Other ones might take a couple of trips in other places. They'll synapse in other areas before we get the actual movement. And therefore, it makes the movement less precise. And one of the types of movement we have that's less precise is walking. Movement of upper arms, for example. Our ability for language. Language is, different in many areas of the world, and it requires us to be able to read, write, speak, and understand words. Language is at the Wernicke area. You guys remember that little dot in the picture? And it's an area that is posterior to the lateral sulcus, and it's usually in the left hemisphere. So it's usually on the left side of the brain. It does allow us to recognize spoken and written language. When we want to speak, this area actually formulates it for us, which is kind of cool. For us to say it, that comes from an area that's known as the Broca area. If either one of these are damaged, it can actually affect what we say or how we say it. The Broca area, it's inferior in that prefrontal cortex, usually, once again, in the left hemisphere. Because it's in the frontal cortex, which is responsible for planning something, okay? It's going to be the motor program. Motor meaning the effects that are carried out of the larynx, tongue, cheeks, lips, and that's for speaking, and hands for signing, when people do sign language. It's going to transmit it to the muscles that need it for us to be able to say it. Our effective language. Brian was talking about that earlier today. The inflection that he was putting on it, like asking questions or that sort of thing, that affective area comes from the right. And in some cases, if there's a lesion, if there's damage in that area, sometimes people can't help but speak very flat because of the damage that was done in that part of the brain. Language is rather interesting. Difficult, but interesting.
So are other organisms just missing these areas? Is that why they don't learn or don't seem to be able to learn language? Even if they might understand? Well, like a dog. A dog will never talk to you. It might understand like things you tell it to do or sounds associated with actions, but a dog will never learn how to speak.
They speak, but not in the language we understand.
They also have like the right anatomy to actually formulate words. You don't know, it's probably like this. Or speaking. Like our anatomy.
And so I think it's a situation because like for example, what was the name of that acorn with an orangutan? Coco. Okay, that was able to sign language. Is that right? Was able to sign, and just because she couldn't like speak it, she understood. Yeah, and she could respond, and they had taught her how to do it in sign language. I was saying now that Jim had a huge part to do with that she had the ability to learn it. So yeah, probably some combinations of different things. When we look at these language areas, these are the areas that are, it's not well defined, okay? But they are the areas that we know that this speech and language come from. So we've got our Wernicke area, and they always associate areas with gyri, mainly because the gyri are so huge. Okay, so they're showing us the left side. They're showing us the Wernicke and the Broca, and then how in this frontal area, which is responsible for the planning, the movement of those muscles, will get transferred to our motor cortex, and we get the process of moving these muscles carried out. So it's kind of cool. One of the things that we are familiar with is the cerebral lateralization. Now, the two hemispheres of the cerebrum. Yes, you take them, cut right down through the middle, open them up, look at them just like a book. Left, right. The left, we know, I mean, how many of y'all do those little Facebook tests or those little tests and everything? You must like the right brain, and that sort of thing. I mean, a lot of people tend to like to do that. And that's because we know that in the left, it is associated with spoken, written language, sequential, analytical reasoning, math and science, breaks information into fragments and analyzes it. I am so left brain, it's not even funny. Y'all saw my drawing, okay? You saw my art. I have no right brain, all right? Right brain, usually representational, perceives it in an integrated way, imagination and insight, right? Musical and artistic, and y'all know I'm lacking that, okay? Patterns and spatial. I did get that part. I do have that pattern and spatial. Comparison of sight, sound, smells, and taste. You know? I mean, it's so funny because, you know, a lot of people I know You know how like you kind of meet somebody and they just know the name and the artist of the song? Okay, I mean, and it could be a song like back from the 70s. Oh, that's so-and-so and so-and-so. And I'm like, huh? And I'll just know whether I like it or not. And all of my friends and stuff who know that about me, they love to be like, but do you know who that is? Do you know who that is? Because they know I'm not. I'm not going to know any idea who it is. We do find that this left versus right does correlate with his handedness. Left-handers, Cynthia? Okay. Y'all tend to be a little more artistic. A little. Okay. I tend to find, left-handed, they do tend to be a little more artistic. Right-handed people, I'm guessing everybody else was right. Anybody ambidextrous? Good with both hands? The right tend to have the left because of the left controlling right controlling the left. Left-handed tend to be, for the most part, associated with the right. Yes, it can differ with age and sex. Until about mid-1900s, children, and even a little bit after that actually, children who were left-handed, that was not acceptable. And parents would actually force them, some of them would actually like tie their hand back and do things to make them work with the right hand. And that can actually be detrimental to do that, because that was something that was unacceptable society-wise. And so it is something that we have found. And the cool thing about children, as they're growing, if they show using both, don't emphasize one over the other, because they're actually using both sides of their brain, which not a lot do. Males tend to be more lateral than females, and because of that, when there might be brain damage, they might not be able to compensate for that. Now, this chapter also covers the cranial nerves. Cranial nerves, they are in no way as easy to talk about as the spinal nerve. I am not going to ask you a lot of information about the cranial nerves. What I do want you to know, however, are the labeling of the cranial nerves, and some of them are going to have either sensory or motor function, meaning their job takes information in or their job causes a response, and there's a few that are both. So I want you to know the labeling of them on the picture, and I want you to know, are they sensory or motor? So the cranial nerves, they're going to begin in the brain stem. That's where the nuclei, they're going to begin there in the brain stem. And they're going to go to either glands or muscles. The sensory portion of those cranial nerves, receptors are located mostly in the head and the neck. They are carrying information between the brainstem with the receptors and the effectors. Because of the way that their fibers are located, meaning that some of the information stays on the same side,